Hey guys, Jake from Michigan here. Hopefully you guys have been enjoying your hunting season up until this point, and hopefully a few of you guys have been able to put a tag on your target buck. Just like we did with our previous video with hunting the pre-rut, in today's video we're also going to be bringing you guys 5 tips for hunting the rut. But in today's video we're going to be trying to bring you those 5 tips in about 5 minutes because it's pretty chilly outside and I need to get back in the woods. Also, just like we did in our pre-rut video, I'm going to briefly be talking about what's going on in the deer woods this time of year to hopefully help these 5 tips or strategies make sense. And each one of the 5 tips is going to come from one of the consultants here at Whitetail Partners. But before we dive into those 5 tips, let's briefly talk about what's going on in the deer woods during the rut. The rut, or the big chase as a lot of guys like to call it, is the whitetails breeding season. Over the next couple weeks, most of the does within the herd are going to come into estrus. They're going to become receptive. They're going to be ready to be bred. This gets those local bucks excited and they start moving a lot more throughout the entire day as they're trying to breed as many does as they can. With that being said, let's dive into our 5 tips for hunting the rut. And the first tip is going to come from me. And my tip is very simple. And that's, if you can, be in the woods as much as you can this time of year. During the rut, bucks are moving a lot. They've got one thing on their mind, and that's breeding does. When they're finished breeding the doe that they're currently with, they're going to leave her and start looking for that next one. And this can happen at any time. He could finish breeding that doe and start looking for the next one in the middle of the night, in the morning, in the evening, in the afternoon, when it's cold, when it's warm. We don't know when he's going to start searching for that next receptive doe, so we want to be in the woods as much as we can. We just want to make sure that we're in the woods, giving ourselves a chance when he starts walking around looking for that next doe. These next 4 tips all have a common theme, and they all relate back to what's going on this time of year with those bucks searching for that next receptive doe. And the next tip comes from Sam over in Wisconsin. Sam wants you guys to focus on your highly traveled areas. Bucks are covering a lot of ground this time of year, and they will pass through your high-use corridors and your pinch points at the same time. Bucks are going to be moving a lot searching for does. So a great stand location to focus on during the rut are pinch points along those high use corridors. This is an area that pinches deer movement down, so as those bucks are traveling through your property, you have a pretty good chance of seeing them as their movement is constricted near your stand location. This next tip comes from Josh down in Georgia. X marks the spot. Josh wants you guys to focus on areas where the highest number of edges converge in and around good cover, as each one increases the odds a cruising buck comes by. And this could be vegetation edges, topography pinches, field edges, clear-cut edges, waterways, anything that creates an edge. And Josh's tip is very similar to Sam's with focusing on those pinch points along those high-use corridors, but Josh is using edges to define movement. And it really can be any type of edge, like he said, but bucks, deer in general, but bucks really like to travel along those edges as they move through the neighborhood. So if you can find a location where multiple edges come together, this is a great spot to set up during the rut. This next tip comes from Lee down in Tennessee. And Lee wants you guys to be aggressive. The time to be conservative and remain patient was throughout the early part of the season. Now that we're into the rut, it's time to get more aggressive. Put in some long sits along your main travel corridors. Lee prefers narrow or constricted portions of that travel route. Always remember that bucks start losing their mind as the rut progresses. They are still fairly cautious in the early phases of the rut, but as the rut progresses and there's less and less does to breed, it turns into a free-for-all seeking out that last receptive doe. Increase your intensity as the intensity of the rut increases as well. And after Lee's tip, I think you guys can start to notice a theme with our preferred stand locations. We really like to hunt these long travel routes, especially where the movement is being constricted, hunting pinch points along these long travel corridors. Remember, the bucks, they're moving a lot during the rut, so we want to make sure that we are giving ourselves the best chance of catching them as they're moving through the neighborhood. Our last tip today comes from Greg down in Ohio. Hunt bucks like you would hunt a rabbit. Even though the bucks are a lot more active throughout the rut, they're moving in daylight more during the rut, bucks will still gravitate towards that thicker cover. Some of Greg's favorite rut stands are right on the edge of really thick cover. So even though the bucks are moving a lot more during the rut, they're moving a lot more during daylight, hopefully giving us a few more shot opportunities, they're not really moving through open hardwoods. They're still sticking to that thicker cover. So for those of you guys in a big wood setting, a lot of open hardwoods, look for those long stretches of thicker cover. Or maybe you have a swamp that runs through your property. These are likely the areas that the bucks are going to use to get from point A to point B because they can remain hidden within that security cover. So hopefully these 5 rut hunting tips can help you guys get a little bit closer to your target buck this hunting season. If you guys do have any questions or maybe additional tips, please drop those in the comment section below. And as always, please let us know if we can help you change your property for good.